I welcome the first speaker on the side proposition to begin the debate. Yeah.
Corona Shaper, verbal POIs only, please. I will not be checking the chat for POI. And I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, the greatest problems in the world, and this is Earth today, are things like war, inequality, and things that all go across borders, but our political systems and governments do not. So, what is our model for this debate today? So, firstly, we tell you that a single unified government is going to be similar to how the American government and like how the EU works. So where there's a main body, like the main head that makes all the big decisions, but there are going to be other kind of state governments that control each little section. So we tell you that the main rules, the main laws, main issues are all going to be solved by the international government, while each state is going to have their own little government. And we did not tell you that we're going to be creating an authoritative regime today, and we're going to be telling you that we are going to be creating a democratic and gradual change in the world. And not only that, we tell you that this single unified government is going to be formed through global consensus that is built on pre-existing things, such as the American government and the EU. And this allows us to solve problems that go against diverse nations, like the problem with Iran and America right now. So what is our burden for this debate? Firstly, we have to prove that this is going to lead to a stable and better world than status quo. Sure, there may be some harms, but we are also going to prove to you today that the benefits of doing this are just significantly outweigh whatever harms exist and the opposition might tell you about today. So firstly, on to my first argument on how this is going to eliminate war. So for instance, in America, you don't see like Texas fighting against like California, right? You don't see states going against war with each other, and you don't see countries in the EU warring against each other. So this is just what is going to happen in our world where there's a single unified government. So you're not going to be seeing like all these world conflicts that are happening right now, like the Ukraine and Russia issue, because that everyone is just going to be under a single governing body. So because no, thank you. And war happens through things like territorial disputes, political disagreement, and competition for power, and such, etc., etc., right? And we think that if you have a single unified governing body, these issues, territorial disputes, political disagreement, power competition, just cannot exist, which means that the whole point of a war would just disappear. And these states, even if there are states, they are not going to be having war in the first place. So this means that having a central and a unified government means that there's not going to be the next Russia-Ukraine situation. There's not going to be conflicts about whether a nuclear war is going to happen between Iran and America, right? And not only that, because the world spends so much money on military enforcement right now, right? And all this money, because now there is no reason for a war and there's no reason to have and deploy a military, all this money can be like that takes up a significant portion of the world's GDP can be used to improve the world's education situation, solve poverty issues, improve healthcare, because the world just does not have the reason to be spending so much money into the military. And yes, if there was a POI, I'll take that.
POI. States of a nation aren't so powerful. So how can you compare states to nuclear armed nations?
Because we tell you that because there are these countries that have like nuclear problems and everything, because they are so close to a conflict, when we make them into states that are all under the same government, all these problems that arise just cannot exist. So therefore, we just eliminate war on our side as a whole. So what is the impact? Firstly, we just eliminate war as a whole. So we save millions of lives and we achieve world peace. And we believe that that's a very beneficial thing that we want. And that's just the most beneficial thing that we can want in this debate today. No, thank you. And obviously, Judge, we do, and in any side of this debate, we do not want people, millions and millions of people, to die out because some politicians disagreed over themselves. However, on our world, because politicians cannot disagree over themselves because they are all under one government and it will not lead to war, millions of lives are not going to be wasted, and we are going to be achieving world peace. And because we told you that we don't now, because the world does not have a need to be spending so much money in their military, they're going to be able to put it into education, solving poverty issues, improving healthcare in every region of the world, like even developing countries right now, and they can be developed so that the world in general, no thank you, has every child and every person in general has better access to education. They are able to escape cycles of poverty, and they have better healthcare access. So what is comparative with this? opposition may as well be just letting another World War III happen, because on their side, there are always going to be governments that disagree with each other. There's always going to be places like Ukraine and Russia that just don't agree with each other and have a little rivalry with each other, which means that there's always potential of conflict. There's always a potential that it can happen. A world war can happen, and they're going to be losing hundreds and millions of lives. And obviously, we do not want to have that. And they can never achieve world peace, because there's always going to be governments that disagree with each other. There's always going to be world conflicts somewhere in the earth. So, however, on our side, we can actually achieve world peace because everyone is under a single unified government, and they will not be able to fight each other over things like territorial disputes because they no longer exist. Moving on to my second argument on how this decreases global equality and resources. So, firstly, on the mechanism, redistributive economic policies, no thank you, can be implemented globally. And how in the current status quo, rich countries like, say, America, hoard resources, the talent, the capital, and that is literally why they're such big and influential countries right now. However, on our side, we are going to be able to be harmonizing taxation, redistribute wealth across the world, even developing states, and invest in them. So we don't have economic exploitation anywhere in the world, because now they're all under the control of one government that oversees them and actually makes sure that this does not happen. And not only that, being one system that unifies everyone means that every citizen, no matter what region of the country where they are from, they are equal, which means that the states are going to be allocated resources accordingly. And this is easily possible because it is one government. So think of it like the America sending resources towards like a random state like Ohio, right? That is just what is going to happen on our side. It's just so much more easier to achieve than opposition side, because obviously in opposition side, no country wants to just really hand out money towards a developing country because they're poor. And not only that, on our side, this benefit is not just achieved with a few countries trying to be charitable and help in. This is going to be achieved with the whole world. We're just going to have a gigantic scale of impact. We're just going to be benefiting every single country, every single person in this whole earth. Therefore, we just achieve just much more benefits than whatever harm the opposition can bring to you. And not only the opposition, when countries are split apart, countries are selfish. They do not want to just be charitable and give money out to random countries. So this is not going to be achieved in any way. So what is the impact of this? Firstly, we lower global poverty. We have development in every single region of the world, because now there's going to be richer states the money and resources of richer states being allocated to these places so that they can have development. And this means that every developing state in the world is going to have much more benefit. They're going to improve. And not only that, because we achieve, however, on opposition side, this is just not possible. Like at best, what they do is a few countries want to be really nice, they want to be really charitable, and they just want to hand out money to a few developing countries. But no, we achieve this, but we achieve this on the whole world scale, no protected time, and everyone gets a benefit from this, which is what opposition clearly cannot achieve. So the judge, what do we tell you today? Firstly, we tell you that we achieve world peace by eliminating war, and we tell you that we reduce global inequality, we get good development in every single place in the world. Therefore, it's a practical post.
Thank you for the fine speech. We now welcome the first speaker on the side opposition.
May I just have 20 to 25 seconds? I'll be starting in the reverse countdown of 3, 2, 1. Today, our opposition stands for a world where a farmer in Kenya, a teacher in Finland, and a protester in Iran are governed by systems that reflect their unique values, cultures, and needs. Because no single body, no matter how idealistic, can rule over 8 billion lives without erasing identity and self-determination. On to some rebuttals. They say a single world government will end war and global inequality. Few responses. First, power struggles still happen within a single system. Centralizing power doesn't end conflict, it shifts it inward. Civil wars, rebellions, and power grabs can still occur under one flag. History shows that centralized empires like the USSR or Roman Empire still face rebellions and civil wars. Second response: one size fits all policies increases injustice. Uniform laws ignore local needs. What works for one region could harm another, leading to resentment, not inequality. Third response: rich regions may still dominate the system. A global government could be captured by wealthier countries. Inequality won't go away. Poorer nations may just lose the ability to resist it. They say more development. Few responses to that. Proposition says a global government will bring more development. But that's a wishful thinking, not reality. Development isn't about one master plan from above. It's about real, local solutions built by people who understand their own problems. A single global authority will drown in bureaucracy. Local voices will be ignored, unique needs will be overlooked, and poorer nations will be stuck waiting for approval from a distant center that doesn't even know their name. That's not progress, that's paralysis. We have seen in India and beyond that decentralization brings faster growth. Smaller states, empowered cities, and local leadership drive real infrastructure, jobs, and investment. A world government would crush that speed, strip away autonomy, and slow down the very development it promises to deliver. I'll not take that. Framing. The status quo today has problems: war, poverty, climate change. We agree. But it also has something important: freedom for countries to govern themselves based on their values, cultures, and needs. This debate matters because proposition wants to remove that freedom. They want one global government to rule everyone. But that risks being slow, unfair, and disconnected from local realities. As the opposition, we say no to a single ruling body. We believe in a world where power is shared, not controlled from the top. The key difference: their world wants one system for all. We want systems that fit the people they serve. Third, definitions and setup. The key stakeholders of this debate are ordinary citizens. These are everyday people with diverse cultural, religious, and social values. They care about having a say in how they are governed and preserving their way of life. They need systems that are responsive to local needs, not global ideals. Secondly, national governments. These are elected or accountable bodies rooted in specific national contexts. They are best positioned to understand and address local issues, crises, and identities. Yes, I'll take that.
Yeah, so did you not listen in our first speaker speech where we said that this thing will be based on the European Union and the American government, where states will still exist, which means that you probably will still have cultural freedom and everything that you say we will not have on our side? Did you not realize that?
But then the motion says that it should be ruled under one global government. So that's why I made this point. They aim to protect their sovereignty and serve the people they directly represent. But thirdly, marginalized communities. These include ethnic, religious, or political minorities often under threat. They rely on local protections, cultural autonomy, and the ability to organize and resist. A single global system risks silencing them if they impose uniform rules that do not protect their uniqueness. Burden of proof. When we prove that a single governing body fails in reality, we take this debate. Argument 1. There's no alternative. Couple of reasons to why this is true. Well, the idea of one global government might sound perfect in theory. It becomes very risky in real life. Why? Because first, it creates a single point of failure. If that one world government turns corrupt, becomes a dictatorship, or just doesn't work properly, people will have no other option. Right now, if a country's government fails, like Venezuela's economic collapse or Myanmar's military coup, people can protest, move to another country, or ask for asylum. But in a world with only one government, those choices disappear. Everybody would be stuck under the same system, no matter how bad at guess. History has already shown how dangerous this can be. In places like Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, millions suffered because there was no other system to stop the abuse. But secondly, a global government would likely destroy cultural diversity and local freedom. The world has thousands of languages, religions, and traditions. One set of rules can't fit everyone. For example, issues like LGBTQ rights or religion are seen very differently around the world. Forcing only global rule could lead to people feeling erased or even oppressed. Imagine trying to apply European style laws on religion to deeply religious places like India or the Middle East. It would cause huge backlash. People need systems that understand their culture and context, not distant rulers trying to treat the whole world the same. On to my next argument. It's entirely unreasonable and unmanageable. Few layers of analysis to that. The idea of one government ruling over 8 billion people is just not realistic or manageable. Even today, global groups like the United Nations struggle to get all countries to agree. When powerful nations like the US, China, or Russia disagree on things like climate change or human rights, it leads to delays and conflict. In a world government, the same powerful countries would likely control most decisions, while smaller or poorer countries would be ignored. Instead of fairness, this would increase inequality and lead to frustration. The rich and powerful would have even more control, and everyone else would be forced to follow. We've already seen in India that decentralization works. When large states of India were split into smaller states, many of them saw better governance, better services, and more development. This proves that sharing power, not centralizing it, helps people more. But fourthly, it's dangerous to assume that one set of laws or policies can fit every situation. For example, how do you make one global education system or one healthcare policy for people living in both New York and rural Africa? Local governments understand their people better. A world government simply can't know what works for everyone. But fifth, people need trust in their leaders to feel represented. A distant world government would feel cold and unapproachable. Citizens are most likely to trust local leaders who speak their language, know their problems, and live among them, not some faraway authority trying to rule the entire planet. In conclusion, panel, in the real world, one size fits all governance doesn't unite, it erases. We choose a world that protects freedom, diversity, and the right to be heard. And that's why I'm so proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Judge, my pronouns are he, him, and if you have any rebuttals, please just do it freely with just turning on your mic. Just please do it verbally because I won't be looking at the chat. And assuming that I'm loud and audible to both sides, especially judges and the other team, I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. We believe that opposition is just misunderstanding the framing that we bring up to this debate, and we believe that there should be more engagement coming from opposition, right? Because first of all, the first speaker comes up to the podium and talks about a few things, but they talk about how we remove freedom and culture because now it's a big government. We're gonna remove all culture. It's gonna be one, right? However, first of all, if you listen to our first speaker, we clearly said that we are gonna do this just like the US or the EU, right? Which means that we're going to give them the basic, but we'll still have the states, like the country's still there. They will have their specific, I guess, culture. It's not going to be ruined, right? A good example of this is Spain and Poland. They're both in the EU, yet they have so different culture, and there's such diverse culture in both sides, right? That's what we're doing. This is the type of world that proposition is pushing for, right? They also talked about how India would be better off with states. However, that's what we're literally doing. You guys are not listening to the framing we bring up and the framing we bring up, and you're not engaging it. Instead, you're trying to just mitigate it by a one-liner saying that, oh, the motion said so. However, we clearly proved in the motion and in the boundaries of the motion that this will happen in our society, right? We believe that our framing still stands and should be standing in today's debate. Now, they also talk about dictatorship and how it's very dangerous for these I guess us to have a big one I guess government. However, we believe that first of all, as we said, we're only governments are only having the basis, which means that we're not having to, I guess, go against or have bias in one country or one state. Especially, we like to say that dictatorship couldn't really happen in our society because first, if there's a big government ruling the whole entire world, that means they have the incentive to make good, to make it peaceful, to make it, I guess, diverse, right? They don't have the incentive to do dictatorship, to favor one country and to be good off, right? Because their whole entire incentive of these people that are working in the big government are to make the world happy, the world safe, and to solve major key issues that are brought up in society, right? That's the main goals we want to fix, and we clearly prove this from our burden, and we believe that we as a whole are trying to prove our burden. I'll also talk about fixing major key issues in my third argument, but they also talk about how it's unmanageable and irresponsible, and it promotes inequality. However, we don't trust this or we don't buy this argument mainly, Judge, because of a few reasons. But one, that first of all, is manageable because we've seen so many states or like the EU or the US having to control many states. It's just possible, right? There won't be other power struggles in our status quo. Because why? Because we've seen these other methods working, and we also know that there will be no incentive for these people working there to be corrupt, to start, I guess, putting bias on specific states that we rule in debate, right? Now, they also talk about LGBTQ and all these norms. However, I like to say that we solve this better in our society. Why is this true? Because you have to understand, Judge, that when we make this, everyone living in the world is the same, right? No one's above each other. No race is above each other. They're all the same. They're all part of this world. They're not specific to one group, right? This means that everyone would be the same. There will be no discrimination on like racial, sexual, or like LGBTQ plus, right? We don't buy any argument from them, especially because they have weak rebuttals and their substances miss a lot of parts and logical leaps in terms of how things will happen and the misunderstanding of the, I guess, framing that we believe to bring up, which means that after all, they have to show more engagement in today's debate. Now, going on to our last argument about how we resolve global collective action problems. And okay, before I go on, I'd like to just get one POI, if any.
Do you really think that the US and Russia or the US and China can coexist under one governing body?
Okay, yeah, of course. The thing we're saying is that Russian and Americans are the same in our world. No one's going above. No one's having to go above. Why? Because there's one big governing system that blocks all of this from happening, from corruption from happening. And we believe that there's clear backlashes, and we believe that these nations are smart enough not to rebel against this because they know there's severe backlash. And that POI is just pretty nonsense, right? There's no political difference for both, I guess the US and Russia in our side of the world. But instead, your side of the world would be more likely that war happens and World War III happens easily, right? Now, going straight on to our argument again. On our side, there's one big government which leads less conflicts. There's less focus on self-interest. Now, why is this true? Mechanism one, there's coordinated actions. Climate change, pandemics, AI regulation, and nuclear disarmament are global issues that require coordination, which we have sufficiently. Why? Because we have big government that takes care of all those major issues, right? We give them laws and the basis to work and to make the world actually move at its best. But not only do we solve these issues, we do it in the most efficient way, which I'll be talking about on my second mechanism. So what do you get from these? What are the two things that coordinated actions make and benefits our society? We solve major issues as explained, and we also have faster and efficient solutions that actually work, unlike their side having to spend decades and decades solving one little small clause from a big issue, right? Now, going on to second mechanism about effectiveness.
POI.
Unified authority leads to enforcing and accepting global policies, right? Executing global policies in the most effective way. Now, why is this true? First, there's no conflict. It's easy to make a consensus or decision at the best, especially because we still have these other states there, which means that we'll get a lot of ideas and make the best decision. And there'll be little to no conflict because all the things that we're doing is based on the big government, and the big government has the power, right? Second, resource allocations. we have more efficient resource allocations, especially because we have access to resources all around the world, making it easy for us to do development, innovation, all these things, and to fix global problems easily because we have so much money, so much resources, and we can fix so much problems that are existent in society, which include poverty, the environment, AI regulations, and more, just on the general idea, right? Now, what are the impacts of this? The impacts are that we prevent ecological collapse, global health crisis, and arms races. It also ensures the survival of humanity and makes global peace as a whole. And our society really just solves these major issues to make humanity, the world, a better place as a whole, which is mutually exclusive because we believe that it will take more than millions of years for opposition side to even have this worked, but also we believe that they do not grant or they cannot say that they have this and it's a symmetrical effect, right? Because on their side they're so split apart, there's so many conflicts that are happening, everything is just a mismatch on their side, and we can clearly see this in status quo, especially with the ideas of Trump having to be selfish and also having America and Iran going against each other, right? Now, what is the delta in this debate, Judge? The delta in this debate is practically clear. Our society promotes a world where we push a very, I guess, logical framing about how there'll be one big base, one big government that solves the basis and gives out and spreads, I guess, the effectiveness and solves major issues, but also solves the issues about war, which globally or leads to the biggest impact of us having to make world peace and a better world for every citizens, the main stakeholders to be happy, right? On their side, what do they give you? They give you status quo where Trump is having to put tariffs on everything he sees, a world where war is happening consistently, a world where many are dying out, and we can solve that, Judge, and therefore so proud to be on side opposition.
All right, thank you very much. Now welcome the second speaker on the side of.
I'll start my debate with a reverse countdown of 3, 2, 1. When I was younger, I dropped a mirror. It shattered into 197 pieces, one for every country on this planet. Each piece was different and sharp. I cried, wanting to glue it back, but my mother stopped me. She said, "Don't try to fix it. The wall was never meant to reflect one clean image. It was made to see from many angles. That mirror is our world. Each country with its own history, culture, pride, identity is one of those pieces. Trying to glue them all under one government, under one law, under one name does not fix anything. It erases every single thing." Good afternoon to the House at large. Today I'm Devyani Rajpatra, the second speaker from opposition, and I stand strongly and firmly supporting my team on the side of opposition. Before I begin, I would like to ask the proposition how they plan to get big countries like US and Russia and China, which can't stand each other, to give up their freedom and join their hands. That is a very unrealistic situation, and that just destroys their basis of the debate. So they keep promoting the universal authority, but how do they plan to implement this? Do they plan to do it by suppression or by war? Because that is simply exactly what both sides do not want. Moving on, they say the UN works in a systematic manner. The UN was meant to be neutral, but now 5 countries control everything through veto power. The resolutions are not binding, and Africa and South America have no role in Security Council's main decisions. Let's not romanticize this proposition. Proposition is selling you a fantasy, a peaceful planet, no borders, no wars, no corruption. Sounds poetic, right? Now let me burst your bubble, my dear proposition, because what you're defending is a world with no checks, no diversity, and no escape. And as our proposition says, every person on this earth will achieve benefits, but sorry to break it up to you, and let me introduce you to the danger of majoritarianism. Now let's talk about majoritarianism, the elephant in the global room. If you build a unified government, it will rule with the dominant voice, the culture with the most votes, the region with the most control, the bloc with the most money. And what happened to the minorities? That is not a theoretical problem. Imagine Pakistan and India now ruled under one body, or Israel and Palestine. You think they suddenly forgot their history? you think global government will remain neutral? Of course not. They'll take a side. And when that side is chosen, the other group is not just unheard, they are erased. And that is simply how population cleansing, cultural dilution, and state sanctioned injustice begins. Moving to my second argument. Let's look at countries that already tried unity. Let's be honest, countries with unified governments still have internal political tension. Look at India. One constitution, one parliament. Yet, political unrest between regions, languages, and states. Or the US. One flag, but 50 states, with 50 laws constantly in friction. Now imagine that on a global scale, you think global body can regulate the conflicts of 8 billion people across Afghanistan, Argentina, and Angola. Even within single nations, unity struggles. So why would it magically succeed across entire civilizations? My third argument: no electoral competition equals absolute power. In a unified global government, you remove something crucial: electoral competition. Right now, if a government fails, we have global mechanism to hold them accountable. We vote them out. We boycott them. We appeal to the UN. But in their world, there is nobody above us. No rival system, no dissenting voice, and the result, dictatorship becomes permanent. Because what happens when the global government goes corrupt? Who replaces them? Who investigates them? Who do people turn to? Simply, the answer is no one. Absolute power. No one to answer to. No pressure to change. That's not peace. That's simply a prison. My fourth argument: no safety net equals to total collapse. Right now, if Sri Lanka falls in the economic crisis, we get global aid. If Sudan faces famine, there are relief options. But under that model, all eggs are in one basket. When one basket drops, everything shatters. No plan B, no second country, no backup system. You build a skyscraper with 5 exits, with no 5 exits, and you got a utopia. That is not a risk, it's a gamble with 8 billion lives. My fifth argument: unity equals uniformity. We promote unity, not uniformity. And those are two very different things. Unity means collaboration across difference. Uniformity means flattening difference. We want a world where France stays secular, Saudi stays Islamic, and Ghana stays Ghana. Where different laws, different ideas, different people exist and engage, not dissolve sameness. A single body ruling everyone. Not practical, not ethical, and not safe. And here's the irony: even with this very debate has been split by age and the level, because organizers understand that one format does not fit everyone. So that's what the government accepts. How does the government expect one format to fit the entire world? Let's be real. The world today is deeply unequal. Some countries are drowning in debt, while others have trillion-dollar economies. You have countries like US, Japan, Germany at the top of the ladder, while countries like Afghanistan, Somalia, and Chad still struggling for just basic infrastructure. Now let me ask you, how does a single global development government decide economic policy for both? Will it impose the same tax law on Norway and Nepal? Will it set a single currency? Will it distribute wealth? If yes, then powerful countries will refuse to give up their advantages. If no, poor ones will be never uplifted. This leads to unresolvable conflict within that global body. The European Union is probably the closest we've come to as a unified government model. Shared currency, shared trade policies, shared decision-making bodies. But it nearly broke apart. Why? Greece's debt crisis showed how rich countries like Germany refused to carry the burden of poor ones. Brexit, the UK left entirely because it felt its sovereignty was being compromised. And even now, the Eastern European countries like Hungary and Poland often defy the EU's liberal values. So a group of culturally and economically similar nations can't function as one. How can the entire world? So let's be generous and accept all of their claims. They say unified government will prevent wars, solve global inequality, and handle climate change, improve justice. Even if all of those things were true, here's the problem they've ignored. How do you get a 195 sovereign nations to agree to give up power? Who writes the constitution of this new world? Who imposes the laws? And what army ensures that nations obey it? Because the moment one country refuses, entire idea collapses. Think about it. US barely accepts UN authority. China doesn't tolerate international intervention. India still defends its sovereignty fiercely. If these powers don't comply, do you force them? Who decides that? There is no neutral global enforcer, no legitimate power higher than nations. And the reality check for the proposition speaker who said, what about World War III and the lower military expense? Panel, one government does not mean no war. It means all wars are civil wars, and that is way more wars. So to conclude, even in the best case, the government is either powerless because it can't impose anything. Or oppressive because it must control sovereign states with force. Either way, their model fails. So proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now welcome the third speaker on the side.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. So as you can see, trying to see him. So I'll be taking POIs through the chat like always. So if the opposition team has any POIs, just kindly type POI in chat. Thank you very much. And I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Because the opposition team always seems to ask us question, I want to ask the opposition team a question. Did you listen to our framing? I'm not really sure. Because I really think in our first speaker and even in our second speaker that we constantly told you that under the name of an international government is going to be really similar to the style of the European Union and the style of the USA government, right? In a sense, we told you in our first speaker that there's still going to be sovereign states that act like separate states in the United States. For example, countries will still have their own sovereign governments. It's going to be similar to the style of Texas or similar to the style of Washington State, right? It's going to be something similar to this. However, because the opposition team clearly did not listen to our framing, the only thing that their first and second speakers come up with is that they say, oh, you're going to be destroying the culture. But did you not listen? We're going to give these people sovereign states, which means that their entire thing about how all our culture is going to go extinct probably will not exist. Our second speaker was so kind enough to give you the example of Spain and Poland, where even though they operate under one European government called the European Union, they still have distinctly different cultures. Why? Because the European government did not really suppress Spain's culture and make it similar to Poland or vice versa. We already told you that we're following the footsteps of the European Union or the USA government style, which means that your entire argument about how our cultures are all going to get destroyed probably will not stand, because if you listen to our framing, this will never be a reality. Now, panel, make no mistake in this debate today that we live in a world with constant tension that constantly threats humanity day by day. Global progress has never been going anywhere in the way it should have been. Why? Because there have been constant delays in actually developing and actually getting the goals we want. The Paris Agreement was supposed to be a step toward climate change resolutions. However, we realized that that step was on the second floor when we were still on the first floor waiting for the elevator. Now, the UN has also vowed to solve issues on war, yet they have failed to do so. We currently see millions and millions of casualties happening in Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Palestine, and displaced families and people dying day by day. The World Health Organization has vowed to us that they're going to solve the world health problem, yet they have failed to do so in the pandemic, which has led to millions and millions to die to the COVID. We say that this is a time for change. The change that the world has constantly pushed back and back for multiple years. We say this is now the time to actually achieve that change that all the nations have promised to us people, yet have never actually achieved to do so, right? So in the first argument, it's very simple. The first speaker comes up and he says that, apparently we're going to be destroying the culture. However, like I already told you, we just want to call out that they did not listen to our framing. They never engaged with the framing from the first to the second speaker, because they didn't listen. But if you did not listen or if you did not hear, let me just kindly tell you what it was. So our framing was, if on the first speaker, that we were going to be we're going to be making the international government really similar to the structure of the American government right now, where a high power controls the United States, yet there are still states like Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, that still have sovereign governments in which they still make their own separate laws for each state. That is what chat POIs, that is what our framing was. If you listen, why? Because we told you that it was going to be similar, where Texas has its own set of own different laws compared to Iowa, where they have their own different laws too. We said that they will operate under one set of basic laws that will apply for everyone, and we will allow these sovereign nations to actually determine what they want in their laws themselves, but have to adhere to the basic fundamental laws, right? I just don't understand, first of all, then, how we're going to be destroying culture, because like the first and second speakers have told you, that we're going to still make we're not gonna be destroying your state. We're not gonna be possibly making the United States come into India and destroy the entire culture of India, right? That would never be feasible from the very start. And just to tell you that we already told you that India would, for example of India would operate under its own sovereign state under the thing, which means that India, because it has its own sovereign government, like the Texas government, that they will still be able to retain their culture. They will still be able to retain their own national laws. They will be still able to obtain their own cultural heritage. And this isn't really a downside on our side, because we already told you that it's going to be this international government is going to be state-wise, which means that we probably will be preserving your culture. So I hope that solves your complaints. Because why? Because now we actually preserve your culture, right? Second of all, they try and tell us that apparently the one global government is going to be tyrannical and it's going to be ruling over the world like some type of Kim Jong-un family. Well, first of all, we want to tell you that in our first speaker, we already told you that it's going to be a democratic and gradual progress. Why? Because what this means is that we aren't just going to force a violent change to all the nations. This is going to be gradual, which means that there's going to be a global consensus around this thing, and we also said that this is democratic, which means that all of your claims about how we're going to be creating an authoritarian regime that slays all its people will never possibly happen in the first place. And this argument should have never even come up in the first place if you listen to our framing. Now, you also the second speaker comes up and she says that it's unreasonable, it's unmanageable, it's unrealistic. Why is that so? I don't know. Now our first speaker told you that it is actually realistic, because we're taking the examples of the United States and the European Union, both examples that have actually worked, where one government actually controls all these separate states, but these separate states have their own government. We already proved to you that our model can actually work in the status quo. Look at the example of the European Union. Look at the example of the United States. You see exactly why. Yes, I'll take your POI. All right, seeing as there's no POIs,
I have a POI.
No POIs, you went over time. Thank you. Seeing as there's no POIs in this thing, the major clash of this debate today is not whether or not we actually preserve their cultures or not. It's not whether about, oh, do we destroy their laws? No, it's not about that, Judge. Just understand that we, in our first and second and third speaker today, have never told you that we're going to be destroying the entire world's culture and replacing it with the United States burger culture. We never told you that. I don't understand where they got that piece of information from. That in their entire states, the entire stance does not stand in this debate today. So in this debate, the only team that can actually win is to prove that this policy has actually benefits, and more benefits compared to the downsides. Now, in the opposition, they give you a bunch of downsides, but we think that we already mitigated this in our framing, and because they did not listen to the framing, they gave you arguments, and we already mitigated it in our second. Now, me as my third speaker, we already mitigated. We already told you that these harms might not even exist. Why? Because of our framing. Now, on the benefits that exist first is that you can't ignore the fact that if there's a one singular government, that there probably won't be a lot of wars. Look at the example of the United States. Look at the example of the European Union. Do you ever see Germany and France fighting? No, you don't. Do you ever see Texas and Washington, D.C. fighting? No, you don't. So the thing is that we solved the issue of war. And we also told you that it's going to be actually better for the global society in order to solve issues like climate change. Why? Because constant tensions have never allowed us to do so. We solved the issues of climate change. We solved the issues of global poverty. We solved the issues of war that have devastated our humanity population for so many years. Judge, if you just care about humanitarian values, it's right for you to vote for our side. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And we now welcome the third speaker on the side opposition.
May I have 10 to 20 seconds? Panel, please note that my POI preference is verbal, and that my pronouns are she and her. And I'll be starting my speech in the reverse countdown of 3, 2, 1. Honorable panel, side prop says that they will get nations to unite to be governed under one single body. But we ask one question: how? How are we supposed to get India, Pakistan, USA, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Iran, and China to coexist with each other? The United Nations isn't a governing body, but let's imagine what would happen if it was. Prop says that they will prevent wars. We agree, but they are starting a global revolution. The cultural diversity of nations disappears. Nations come together, but their ideas and ideologies don't. Peace on the inside, peace on the outside, chaos on the inside. They stop wars but start a worldwide revolution. On to some clashes. Clash 1, cultural diversity. Prop dissolves the cultural diversity in nations. We offer a world where you find each nation unique. We give you linguistic and cultural diversity. Proposition's world offers none of that. Clash 2, human development. We offer less conflicts and proper governance systems in each nation. They offer chaos, not development. If ideologies of nations don't align, how can Prop achieve world peace? Panel, the debate has almost ended, yet proposition did not answer my POI. States of a nation aren't powerful. So how can you compare states to nuclear armed nations? They share cultural and linguistic ties, but their thoughts are united. They're all under one government, the same government. Okay, but can you seriously imagine two states, Russia and Ukraine, coexisting with each other in proposition's world? Prop says that they will promote education and development. We say that all nations together have different needs, different ideologies, different focus. We say that nations, in fact, do give money to developing countries. Like China launched BRI, India gives money to Bhutan for development. We say that development is more progressive on our side. Before moving on, any POIs? 3, 2, 1. Lack of engagement from side proposition. Clash 3. International cooperation. Let's take a look at the EU and the UN. The EU is struggling from economic disparities. The UN might be united on the inside but separated in their thoughts. The reason that Russia-Ukraine war and Israel and Palestine war are still ongoing. And proposition clearly failed to show us how they can unite nations considering geopolitical tensions. It may seem peaceful for prop, but on the inside, it's utter chaos. And if nations separate due to chaos, there's no one to govern them. In our world, we work towards international peace and cooperation. In their world, they just create chaos. Let's compare our worst case to their best case. Their best case, prevention of wars and human development. They said that they prevent conflict, but they just increase it. They said that they will stop World War III. We say that they start World Revolution 1. They talk about efficiency and development. We say that nations don't co-align with each other. The EU has had other tensions too. Hungary and Poland have clashed with the EU over rule of law, migration, and media freedom. Greece nearly exited the Eurozone in 2015. Countries like Italy, Spain, and Netherlands have all had serious internal debates about sovereignty and EU interference. They say that they have managed to prevent war. We say that they can't make enemy nations unite, US and Russia together. Panel, please note that this is impossible in the status quo. They say our side provides war. We say that at least they solve their issues through international cooperation. Proposition, kindly stop dreaming and come back to reality. How can two nations who are enemies coexist with each other, have the same government, make same decisions, have the same cultural diversity? Our worst case is cultural loss and international cooperation. Cultural loss means loss of knowledge, language, culture, and more. If you build a unified government, it will rule with the dominant voice, the culture with the most votes, the region with the most control, the bloc with the most money. And what happens to the other nations? This is not a theoretical problem. Imagine in Pakistan and India now ruled under one body, or India or Israel and Palestine. A forced model wouldn't improve compliance. It would breed resentment and rebellion. They promote such a world. The Paris Agreement works on voluntary cooperation, not global government. Countries chose to participate in diplomacy, not dictatorship. Panel, please note that proposition has been going on that they have not heard of our framing. But have you read the motion? It says rule the world means entire control. So how does sovereign model work in the motion? And do you address the diversity mentioned? People in America have the same language and same culture. So how does this contradict your case? Panel, the biggest joke of today. Our opponents are comparing militarized nuclear nations to Texas, an American state. They do not tell us how enemy nations are going to work together. They say India stays sovereign, but their global government controls military, trade, justice, and climate policy. So what happens when India's if laws clash with global rules? Who decides? Not India. You can't call it sovereignty if the global body has the final say. Their model keeps the flag, not the power. There are flaws in their model. I'll be stopping for any POIs. 3, 2, 1. Lack of engagement. That third speaker said, UN failed, so we need a better version. Exactly. The UN's failure proves that global power structures get hijacked by elites, not fixed by centralization. The answer isn't more central power, it's more accountability and decentralized collaboration. Our side prevents civil wars worldwide. They start a whole revolution full of dozens of wars, and people will get killed. With this, I'm so proud to oppose this motion.
Thank you very much. We now welcome the reply speaker on the side of Yoyo.
Yes. So I'll be starting in the reverse countdown of 3, 2, 1. Should we give up national freedom, local control, and the cultural diversity for the dream of one single government? Because that's what the motion says. Proposition, if you read the motion. And their model doesn't actually mechanize how they actually plan to preserve the different cultures of 8 billion different people. They keep talking about the EU and the USA. But let me break the truth. The EU works because its member countries share a similar history, culture, income level, and geographic closeness, which makes cooperation easier. A global government would face massive challenges due to deep political, cultural, and economic differences. Same for the USA. So that example is completely flawed. Proposition's burden and why they failed. Proposition inherently had to prove that a single unified global government wouldn't just be ideal, it would actually work better than what we have right now. That it would bring peace, fairness, and development to 8 billion people with different histories, beliefs, and realities. But they never showed us how one authority could govern everyone equally. They never told us how it would avoid corruption, breakdown, or abuse of power. And most of all, they ignored the cost of erasing voices, cultures, and democratic choice in the process. They sold you a utopia, but didn't tell you who gets to rule it or who gets left behind. Their arguments and why they crumble. First, it ends war and promotes equality. This ignores reality. Power struggles will still exist, only now they'll happen inside one unchecked system. We showed you how global power can easily fall into the hands of a few nations. Second, it creates unity. They say we all feel like one big global family, but that ignores people's identities, languages, and beliefs. You can't force connection by removing culture. And real unity comes from respect, not uniformity. Third, it brings more development. They promised a global progress, but we pointed out how centralized systems slow down decision making and ignore local needs. Development works when local leaders solve local problems, not when a far off power pushes off a one size fits all plan. What we brought and why it stood strong. We brought the real world truth that decentralization projects people from trinary empowers nations to lead based on context and lets progress happen at different speeds and styles. We brought real examples. India, smaller states improving development, local governments driving faster results, and the danger of unchecked global power. And we asked the question that they refuse to answer. Is this global government turns bad? What then? Because when you put all the power in one place, you don't have any plan B. Key clash points in this debate. First, representation. They give one system for all, but that system won't reflect anyone's value. We agree that real representation comes from local governments that understand cultural and regional needs. In our world, communities shape their own futures. In theirs, distant rulers decide for billions. Secondly, progress. They talk about ideal progress but have no plan for real change. We give examples of how decentralization drives faster development and smarter policies. Local governments adapt and act quickly, not global committees stuck in a gridlock. That's what exactly improves life. Third, freedom. In their world, if the system fails, the whole planet suffers. No escape, no reform. One authority means people are stuck with whatever rules are made. In ours, people can resist, relocate, or rebuild. That's what keeps power in check and freedom alive. Best case versus worst case. In our worst case, some governments will fail, but people can fight back, move, or demand better. In their best case, if the global system fails, the whole world pays the price. No escape, no accountability, and no second chances. Final nail in the coffin. Why we win? Proposition gives you a fantasy, a world where one power rules all, but they couldn't show you how it stays fair, how it serves everyone, or how it avoids collapse. We give you a world that works with freedom, diversity, competition, and room to grow. They offered control, we offered choice, and that's why we are proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for a wonderful debate round. Yep, top reply speaker, ready when you are.
Judge, I'll wait. Thank you, Judge. I'd like to start my speech if I'm audible to both sides. My pronouns are he, him, as mentioned, and I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, as the last reply speaker, I'd like to go on to the burdens, tell you why we win in today's debate, how we fulfill our one and only burden, and why ultimately we win in today's debate. But before I go on to my burdens and tell you why we win, I'd like to first talk about some issues that are happening in today's debate. First of all, we believe that there's a lack of engagement coming from opposition, especially because they don't do any rebuttals. Neither do they ask or accept a lot of POIs, and they also do not engage with the framing we give to them, and they do not really, I guess, buy or go against or engage at least in the debate to say that our framing is wrong, for example. But however, we believe that our framing still stands at the end of the debate, especially because it was untouched. And also, we believe that there's two main issues. First, they didn't listen to our speeches because it clearly looks like they don't understand our framing that we possess to them, and they're just doing arguments that are based on their own framing. But second, we believe their framing is very unreasonable and uncharitable from the start. And why is this true? As our third speaker clearly mentioned, we believe it's uncharitable because, first of all, they talk about how Western countries will dominate, and that's gonna be great, and how our side, how is it gonna happen for like China, Russia, and US to come together, right? We believe that, first of all, this is unreasonable framing, saying that America would dominate the whole entire world. This is like just very unreasonable, especially when we clearly said that on our side, we will have the big government having to control and secure all these things, right? This is just very uncharitable framing coming from their side, actually. However, we'll also like to say they talk about how Russia and America is not going to come together. However, let's be charitable and say that, sure, it might. Let's just be charitable and explain to them why it will actually happen. First of all, they have been together. They've been working together. Like, for example, the UN, they've been working together. But also, it's not like the US citizens hate the Russian citizens. It's Trump hating Putin and Putin hating Trump, right? It's just them. I guess the presidents and the presidents are just putting propaganda on these people to say that we should hate the Russians. We should hate them because they are not helping us. This is the type of world. However, we're just fixing this totally in our side of the world. Opposition, they still have this left. They have all of this left. They have Trump putting tariffs on every single thing he sees. They have a world where there's war every single time. However, on our side, we clearly sufficiently solved this because we solved the main core, I guess, issue of it, not the outside of it. Now, what is our burden in today's debate? It is to prove that we have having to have a big government overall leads to stable and a better world and there's more benefits than harms. Now, first, how do we prove this? First, we talk about how it eliminates war. We clearly prove that, first of all, there will be less conflict when everything's together. And also we prove that, first of all, when all these things happen, it's more likely that there won't be any conflict, especially because they're under one single government. And we see that opposition third speaker clearly agrees to this, which takes this, I guess, which proves that we have the path to victory for eliminating war. But also we prove that there are low global inequality, especially because one government's over it. There's no humanity, like disgrace or like or racism, sexism, or like LGBTQ plus issues in our side of the world, because we all are the same people and we are all people that are living in the world, right? And as a whole, this shows that we prove our second path to victory. But last of all, we actually prove that we resolve global collective active problems. This means that we as a whole, I guess, fix major issues such as like AI regulation, poverty, and I guess the environment through the money that we have from security. And also another alternative that we as a whole can have a lot of resources in the reach of the big government's hands, which means that we have more efficiency in terms of fixing these issues, and we actually fix these issues sufficiently in today's debate. Now, before I finish up and tell you why, as a whole, we win in today's debate, we like to say that opposition has little to no engagement, and we believe that having to not touch our arguments is a strategic flaw from start, and they don't really prove their burden at all, and they don't even press or push a burden or tell us a burden, and therefore we believe that from start it is clear that we simply and easily and most efficiently take this debate.
All right, thank you very much for the fine speech. So that'll be it. You can probably leave now, or I think I can probably use the prep room. So panelists, if you don't mind, you can